Following Sean Strickland's defeat in his rematch with Draus Desi, Daniel Cormier recently offered his thoughts on the public backlash between Strickland and his coach Eric Nixick. The coach said he only wants to train world champions in the future and expressed his annoyance at Strickland's refusal to make the required changes during the fight. While it's acceptable to have high expectations, DC attacked Nixick for his public declaration, stating that it's not appropriate to publicly declare that your sole goal is to coach world champions. He stressed that you won't always be working with champions in the fight game and that publicly expressing such opinions could give other fighters in the gym the wrong impression. DC acknowledged that Strickland was blatantly disregarding his coach's orders in between rounds, but he also understood the coach's aggravation. He admitted that, particularly on such a large stage, it must have been difficult for coach to watch. His warrior refused to change. DC emphasized that any conflict between a boxer and their coach should not be expressed in public or during a bout. Present is no need in having the coach present, he said, if a boxer isn't going to listen to their side. He emphasized the value of harmony and mutual respect in the fighter-coach dynamic.
The only area that I think Coach Nixick was wrong was, I want to coach world champs. Not everybody's going to be a world champ. You don't get to coach all world champions. You coach guys that might get to the Contender Series and lose. So you don't get to coach just world champions. I get the thought of what he's saying, but not everybody gets there, right? So to make that your goal, but I don't know publicly if you say that. But any great coach will have words for their athlete. And I walked up to Eric and I go, it was the same fight. And you could see the frustration. You could see the frustration in between rounds. You could actually see Sean kind of walking away from Eric as Eric was giving instructions in between rounds. Now, if these guys have a severed relationship, it can't be recognized on the world's biggest stage. It can't be still on display when you make...
Belal Muhammad declares that if Islam Makhachev chooses to advance, he will give up the UFC belt. Given that his close buddy and training partner Belal Muhammad is currently the UFC welterweight champion, the lightweight champion has stated plans to leave the 155 category soon, which might create a special opportunity for UFC Gold. In a recent interview with Barstool Chicago, Bal talked candidly about everything from his experience training with the renowned Khabib Nurmagomedov to living in Chicago. The topic of whether he would be willing to face Makhachev if the champion chose to advance and challenge him for the welterweight belt came up at one time. Despite the fact that Islam and Belal are close friends and train together, MMA fans had a field day making fun of Bal when he stated that he wouldn't rule out the possibility of confronting him in the future. MV's candor over a possible matchup generated conversation, and Belal's swift dismissal of the notion has generated some conjecture. Fans are wondering whether he's actually not up for that kind of battle at this point in his career, or if he's just avoiding the possible risk of fighting his friend, especially given he said a few times that Islam causes him issues while training. Islam is different for him and me, so I would never fight him. We've exercised together, and it's a whole different relationship when you're training like that, sweating and bleeding with someone. Since they have been so helpful to me, I would prefer to move up to 185 and let him take 170 because I suppose it wouldn't be about the money for either of us. If that's the case, I train with bigger guys, and I weigh about 190 pounds, so I should have no trouble reaching 185 pounds. I could feel their strength, and aside from Comet Chimay, 185 is arguably the easiest weight class. I mean, Doopy and Sean Strickland are awful. On the Jackson podcast, Eric Nixick recently revealed some intriguing details about the sparring sessions between Francis Ngannou and Sean Strickland. According to the coach, Strickland truly avoids Francis because he's afraid of him and accepts that fear by thinking back to his early years when his father used to beat him. Sean uses that dread as drive, which gives him a psychological edge. According to Eric, Francis typically pulls his punches during their heated sparring sessions, but Ngannou takes over and corrects him when Strickland starts swinging hard.
What, man? Sean will spar Francis.
Stop.
I swear to God.
You tell me Sean Strickland spars Francis Ngannou.
Hand to God. But Sean says the same thing. He's like, listen, I spar him because there's no other person that can put the fucking fear of God in me the way that Francis can. So it makes you spar a particular way where like you got to be on your fucking game. If Francis wanted just to fucking kill him, I'm sure he could.
Have they?
Sean will start winging shit at Francis's head, and then Francis will be like, all right, motherfucker, and then have to show him what time.
There's more. A fascinating story about a sparring session between Sean and Francis was also provided by Sergey Romanov, a Russian welterweight who trains with Nixie. During their sparring, Ngannou delivered a vicious liver shot that momentarily knocked Strickland down, according to Romanov. Sean tried to move more forcefully and swore at Ngannou. Obviously upset, Romanov remembered that Strickland was in pain after being struck by the liver shot several times, but he refused to give up and was prepared to fight on despite the obvious anguish. Yes, twice in a row, Strickland was hit with a rather severe liver shot. In fact, it briefly knocked him down and he was furious and cursing. "It's crazy how intense it can get in those sessions," end quote. You, as he tried to get back in Francis's face and keep the pressure on, Francis just smirked, though didn't seem fazed at all. However, Strickland didn't back down. He was still ready to go, even though you could tell he was hurting badly and the pain was sticking with him. They switched sparring partners pretty quickly after that, so no more damage was done. At 155, Sonnen would want to see Ilia take on Paddy the Baddy. Rekindling their feud that began in 2022, Pimblett has been causing trouble with El Matador once more. Paddy made fun of the current featherweight champion in a recent interview, calling him and saying that she would like to fight him if Ilia were to increase her weight to 155 pounds. He went one step further and implied that Alex Volkanovski's elimination from the featherweight class had paved the way for Ilia's ascent to the crown. In addition, he raised doubts about El Matador's ability to compete at lightweight, implying that the Georgia champion could find it difficult to match the 155-pound competitor's height and strength. Paddy's call-out of Ilia intrigues Sonnen, who sees it as a possible big battle. He noted that the matchup is made more exciting by the actual animosity between the two competitors. Sonnen recently discussed the clash in a video on his YouTube channel, highlighting how the personal hostility might lead to a fierce battle inside the octagon. El Matador is invited to reach 155 pounds thanks to Paddy the Baddy. Ilia isn't a well-known enough brand to be Paddy's first pick, but he will do it because of the hand sanitizer issue. Even though he doesn't exactly have the name recognition today, he will only postpone his desire to beat Ilia till now at 155 lbs because he wanted to beat him back then. Okay, I summarized, but that's excellent from a performance perspective. Paddy's declaration that he is willing to do the world champion a courtesy is fantastic. Remain in your weight class, compete for a world title, and use your contract's participation clause, the only one in MMA that can earn you millions of dollars in a single night. All of that adds up to 155 over a personal dispute that doesn't include a title. There isn't any legacy at stake, but we do have this hand sanitizer incident, and guess what? They do have unresolved matters.